you joke about how you may disagree politically, but as you said, Cornel, is that deeper human element that allows that disagreement not to be so personal and so toxic that as we would joke about Thanksgiving during the Trump era, people they stopped seeing grandma. I'm not going to grandma's house because she supports Trump and I can't deal with that. Or I'm not going to, hang out with cousin Joe because he's a Biden guy and I can't deal with that. What is it that we've lost when you think about that inquiry and deliberation that Aristotle referred to, that has now disabled our ability to communicate with each other?
Well, shall I say a few words about that and then turn it over to Cornel?
Sure.
Our disagreements are obvious. I mean, Cornel's honorary chairman of Democratic Socialists of America, and I'm not honorary chairman of Democratic Socialists. I'm a traditional, old school conservative. But I think that may obscure the profound points of commonality that really are deeper. Number one, I see in my brother Cornel a truth seeker, someone who has not fallen so in love with his own opinions that he would rather persist in his opinions than have to give them up under the pressure of rational scrutiny and rational argument. Far from treating challenges or criticisms as personal attacks, which a lot of people do today.
Yeah.
He treats them as opportunities for learning. He wants to be challenged because he wants to get at the truth of things. If he's wrong about something, he wants to know he's wrong. And I try to be the same way. I try to be a truth seeker, not so in love with my opinions, not wrapping my emotions so tightly around my convictions to become a dogmatist or an ideologue. People don't know the real Cornel West, let me tell you that, as I do. The Cornel West I know is the Cornel West who understands more deeply than any conservative scholar I know the conservative intellectual tradition.
I definitely would agree with that.
Who knows more about Edmund Burke, Leo Strauss, Eric Voegelin than Cornel West? Where will you find Cornel West every year in September? At the Eric Voegelin meeting of the American Political Science Association with all those conservatives, because he understands that even though he comes out in a different place, the great thinkers of the conservative tradition have something to say, and he wants to be challenged by that. And I feel the same way from the other direction. Number two, we're both Christians, and we're both serious about our faith. We're frail and fallen and fallible, and we fall short, and we fall down, and we have to lift ourselves back up. Believe me, you got a couple of cracked vessels here. But we believe in the principle of Genesis 1, the Imago Dei, that every single human being, no matter how weak, vulnerable, frail, no matter how fallen, no matter how far astray they've gone, is made in the very image and likeness of God.
Mm-hmm.
We both share that. That's a starting point. Now, we'll defend it. It's not a starting point that we're going to defend arbitrarily, they're going to hold our, we'll defend it. But it's a starting point from everything else. So when we discuss the big issues, human nature, the human good, human dignity, human rights, human destiny, we're starting from a common ground. Now, how to apply that principle? Sometimes we come out in different places, but we're starting from a common ground, and we know each other's hearts. And I know Cornel's heart is in the right place. He is not a dogmatist. He is not an ideologue. People don't understand that. He wants to get at the truth of things. He has never resisted a challenge from me, and I have never resisted a challenge from him. We can have a genuine conversation because we've got a common ground. We've got a common good. We both want to get truth matter, and we both recognize our own fallibility. We both recognize we're wrong about some stuff. Right now, we know we're wrong about some stuff. The only problem is we don't know what the things are we're wrong about. Everyone is wrong about some stuff. You got some false ideas in your head. I don't care who's listening out there. Every single one. You got some false ideas in your head. One sure way to make sure those false ideas stay in your head and aren't replaced by true ideas is never allow yourself to be challenged. Only listen to people who will confirm you in your beliefs. They'll confirm you in your beliefs that happen to be true, but they'll also confirm you in your beliefs that happen to be false. The only way we can hope to make any progress toward truth is to allow ourselves to be challenged, to consider the best arguments, the best that has been thought and said on competing sides of issues. And not say I'm not going to go to Thanksgiving dinner because, grandma's going to say something that offends me, or Uncle Joe's going to say something that offends me. We have to be open to the possibility of learning from each other. Let's recognize our own fallibility and embrace the intellectual humility, without which, A, we're not going to deepen our understanding. We're not going to get anywhere near true wisdom. And B, we're going to break our social bonds. They will break. They are social, and we deserve them.
Yeah, but Cornel, I really appreciate what Robert is saying, and it's, to put it in one vernacular context, that's great on paper, but the reality of it is, people want that confirmation bias, right? They want to be in a space in which the thing that they have now concluded in their own mind, without any intellectual rigor, without even picking up a damn book to get a perspective on it, or not critically thinking about or questioning the source of the thought that they have in their head. Folks are comfortable there. How this book is titled "Truth Matters." So let's start with the question: what the hell is truth? If I think it's true that DEI caused the airline crash that happened last week, or if I think DEI is why my son didn't get a job, or my daughter was fired from a job, if I've created a truth around these things, how do you begin? Then what matters if my truth is off in the first instance?
No, I hear exactly what you're saying. You see, part of the challenge is that, we're living in a moment of such spiritual decay and moral decrepitude. And what I mean by that is the virtues, faith, hope, and love, or justice and courage, the virtues have been so pushed to the margins. And the enabling virtue of all the other virtues is courage. And courage is in short supply. You can't even engage in a quest for truth without courage. I mean, we know that the Black National Anthem is lift every voice. You can't have a voice without courage. You can have an echo without courage, but you can't have a voice. Most of our culture is just echoes of silos because it's conformity. It's tied to career. It's tied to what you've been told. Nobody thinking for themselves independently, courageously. And then the larger step, and this is, the difference between Jesus and Socrates, right? He never sheds a tear. Jesus weeps, which means Socrates never really loves anybody deeply. Jesus weeps because he loves persons concretely, but it takes courage to love, courage to tell the truth. But if what you have is just cowardly accommodation or adjustment to unjust status quo just for career, and this cuts across politics, cuts across ideology, it cuts across skin pigmentation, cuts across sexual orientation and religion. It's a human thing. And we're living at a moment in the history of this empire. It's been about 70 since the beginning of the species. United States is 68. Empires come and go. And when you have civic cowardliness or lack of civic courage, and then on a personal spiritual level, it's simply all about materialism, narcissism, individualism, egoism. Where's the compassion? Where's the courage to interrupt it? Then you end up with neo-fascist spirits, neo-fascist sensibilities, neo-fascist policies. And you don't begin with Trump. He's the sign and the symptom of it, but he is the concrete manifestation of it. And that's just gangsterism crystallized. And it's a human thing.
True. Yeah.
It's gangsterism, it's a human thing. Gangster inside of each and every one of us. We got to fight it every day on the battlefield of our own souls. But when the gangsterism wins and there's no space for humanity, serious engagement with issues that we know are bigger than us. So Brother Robbie and I begin with what? We know truth, capital T, is bigger than us. I don't have a monopoly on truth or beauty or goodness or the holy. No one does. But we could try to get at it. If we're humble enough, if we have enough intellectual humility, we can try to get at it. And in trying to get at it, we learn a whole lot from each other, and we might be able to sustain some democratic possibilities in a moment of such overwhelming spiritual decay and moral decrepitude.
You actually have a very interesting back and forth in the book on this question of truth right out of the gate. At one point, Robert, you make the point in that context. You ask, well, where does truth talk come in? It's within these various traditions that are trying to get us outside of ourselves and make claims about reality, because reality is bigger than our egos. It's bigger than our subjectivities. It's bigger than our families. It's bigger than our tribes. It's bigger than our nations. I would argue that very much like virtues and the unity of virtues, be they pagan or Christian or Judaic or whatever that truth is, inseparable from beauty and goodness and even the holy. Truth talk without beauty talk is impoverishing to me. Truth, in a way, is like Kierkegaard on love, one and many. And then you nail the point with the question. So truth then is a property of reality. And Cornel, there are transcendental universals that get us outside of our egocentric predicaments, always in the context of our tradition, because we're temporary historical creatures. You guys go, it's fascinating when you're reading what you've written. You go in and out of these very deep intellectual spaces, and then you sort of come up out on a leveled landscape in which there's a higher degree of understanding and clarity, which is what you were laying out, Robert, in the paragraph I just read. And then Cornel just kind of go, yes. So let me take you into the underside so you can understand why what you just asked is relevant. I set the question up that way because it for me, in reading the text, the one questions that come back to me that you both are in this classroom space, and it begs, have you noticed in the intellectual curiosity and sort of truth-seeking spirit change within your students?
Oh, when we teach the seminar?
Yeah.
Our job, it's our vocation, is to awaken that truth-seeking spirit. Every student I've ever taught in 4 decades has got it down there in them, but often it needs to be ignited, needs to be brought forward. Now, you're having to deal with some real problems today because students are brought up in a culture of tribalism.
Right.
In those silos Cornel was talking about. On one side, they watch Fox News and they read the Wall Street Journal editorial page, and they maybe, read Compact magazine or something. No, those are all fine. I have no objections to any of them, but people are getting one story and they're being reinforced in everything they already believe. On the other side, they watch MSNBC or CNN, they read the New York Times editorial page, they read the, whatever the equivalent of National Review magazine. I don't know if the New Republic is still going or something like that, or the Nation, right, or whatever it is, and they're reinforced. And what happens is the idea that there's a truth that transcends ideology, and that's got to be honored, so that we don't fall so deeply in love with our own convictions that we lose sight of truth and fall out of touch with reality. We've got a big problem there. So as teachers, what we've got to do is help students to overcome that spirit of tribalism. Now, we have to be honest with the students. You pay a price for that. You just do. And that's because some of the communities that we belong to, and we value and we treasure our membership in, are communities of conviction. Their political parties, their ideological categories, right, and so on. And to be a member in good standing of that community and to have those relationships with you value, honestly, means conforming. And when you're out of conformity, you're out of the group. And Cornel and I have both experienced that.
Oh, tell me about it, brother.
If you take the right, if you have too, Michael, if you we have to be honest with students.
Hey, Robert,
everybody's going to love you. Everybody's not going to love you.
When I got to the RNC, I told people, and even in most of my political career, I've always told people, I don't play well with others. So I'm just telling you, I'm not going to be your average little conservative Republican, because that's not how this works. But
well, when I refused to go along with Trump, I was out. When Cornel refused to go along with Hillary Clinton, or when he criticized Barack Obama, he was out, because you're not allowed to do that. You're out of bounds. You're expected to conform, and that costs real relationships. We have to, again, be honest with our students. We can't say, oh, everyone's going to love you, everything's going to be fine. If you're an actual independent thinker, if you're a genuine truth seeker, your life's going to be hunky dory. Well, it didn't work out that way for Socrates. And you take some real risks when you engage in the Socratic project. And nevertheless, it's our job to do it, to model it for our students, and to encourage them to abandon the groupthink, abandon the conformism, abandon the ideology, and start actually prioritizing and honoring truth above all else.
Cornel, is that the truth-seeking spirit? What is that? How do you guys define that in the book, the truth-seeking spirit?
Oh, I think we're engaging in a creative fusion of the Socratic legacy of Athens, where truth-seeking has to do with courageous self-examination and courageous examination of society and the world on the one hand, but also the prophetic legacy of Jerusalem. And this is very important, because both Robbie and I, as Christians, we really do zero in on that Palestinian Jew named Jesus, with the legacies of Augustine and St. Francis of Assisi and Fannie Lou Hamer and Julian of Norwich, a very rich tradition in which truth is not an abstract proposition. It is a concrete fleshification of God. When Jesus says, I am the truth, that is profoundly existential. Now, Robbie and I go at it tooth and nail, because he's tied to Aquinas, the greatest Italian philosopher in the history of the world. And I'm very much tied to Soren Kierkegaard, who was Danish and
I'm more with Robert. Aquinas and Augustine.
That's what I like to hear.
But when Aquinas says, all of my theology draw after my deep mystical experience, comes St. Francis, here comes the Kierkegaard, elements of Augustine, here's Plotinus. So it's a rich tradition. And we wrestle within that tradition, but most importantly, we understand that truth is something to be lived. It's not something to just simply contemplate in an abstract form that does not lead toward the fundamental transformation in your life toward your neighbor, with a self-surrender to an almighty God that tells you that every human being is made with a sanctity and a dignity, no matter who they are, no matter where they are, and therefore there's a tie to suffering and social misery. And that's where, of course, the legacy of the Black freedom movement comes in for me, with Martin King and others, right? You're starting on the chocolate side, you embrace all of humanity, but you're dealing with catastrophe, calamity, slavery, lynching, whatever it is, genocide in the New World, genocide in Gaza and other places, Germany and so forth. All this overwhelming suffering, what we're gonna do? How do we respond? How do we keep loving? Lead with love and courage, and know that it's cruciform. That the cross is not something you talk about, but it's something you bear, and you may end up being crucified on it yourself with a smile. In the name of a Jesus who's already transformed your life, you see.